Hey everybody, it's Mallory, and this is episode 9 of The Stare Down. I've got a lot of good stuff for you, including why my voice sounds like this. So if you're ready, sit back, relax, grab a drink or two, and let's get into The Stare Down. All right, so thanks for hanging in there with me. I was supposed to drop an episode on Friday, but life kind of got a little busy, so let's just go ahead and jump right into that. So on Friday, I went to Oxford. My husband is not in town, so I went by myself and went to the FCA luncheon where my really good friend Coach Yo was one of the guest speakers. And so I got to listen to her speak and tell her story a little bit, see a bunch of good friends, get to give her a hug afterwards. And then the greatest thing ever happened. I got to meet Juice Kiffin, the goodest boy in the SIP, even though I don't think he's a very good boy. I think he's just really kind of a destructive young lab. But no, got to meet Juice. I've been wanting to meet him ever since he kind of arrived on the scene. And it was great to see him, give him pets, and I even got a few kisses from him. So those pictures will be up on social media and on the blog post that'll go along with this episode. So after that, went and saw, some family friends, hung out with my family for a little bit, and then I got ready to go to the Vault Society dinner. And if you listen to episode 5, the 4 C's, you'll remember that we had a couple of guests, Maddie and Blair, on who talked about something called Empower, where it's basically a capital campaign for new facilities and things like that for women's athletics, and all of the money raised from that goes into only women's athletics. Well, it's a part of the Vault Society overall, which is the Ole Miss Athletic Foundation's major giving program for all things capital campaign. So each year, if you're a part of Vault Society, you get an invite to a dinner on the field at Vaught Hemingway Stadium, which is really cool. And so I was getting ready to go to that. A couple of friends of mine were going to be there, so I was excited to see them. And when I got there, I found out that apparently the 2003 football team had also been invited, as they were going to be honored at the game against LSU on Saturday. Well, if you know me and you've ever known me for any amount of time, I think Patrick Willis is probably the greatest defensive player to ever come out of Ole Miss. And I love him so much. And so I was really hoping that he was going to be there. So I got really excited. Long story short, we go in to sit down for dinner, and I look up and there is Patrick Willis walking in. So after very not silently freaking out, I was convinced by my friend Jen to get up and go get a picture. So I did, visibly shaking again. He unfortunately got pulled away before I could talk to him and introduce myself, but super gracious guy. And then after we got done with that, Coach David Cutcliffe was standing on the field along with his wife, Karen, and they were talking to someone. And so he was taking pictures, and when he finally turned around, shook mine and Jen's hands and said, very nice to meet us. And Jen got a picture of me and him. And then I proceeded to tell him my story about being diagnosed with cancer in 2000 and how he and the teams that he coached from 2000 to 2003 always signed things for me and mailed them to me, or just did things to make me feel special when I was on campus. And y'all, I ended up crying, telling him how much I appreciated him and how I hope he, gets an opportunity to tell his former players that what they did for me was truly life-saving and life-changing. And that I hope he also knew that encouraging his players to be the kind of kids growing into men, and encouraging them to do that type of stuff and be selfless and do just a simple act of signing an autograph or taking a picture, what that really means. And that, I really appreciated him being that type of leader for them. And it was just such a wonderful moment to tell him in the best way I could, because there are never, ever going to be adequate words or time to tell him how much I truly, truly appreciate everything he and his teams did. But it was really cool to get to try and do that in that moment. So Coach Cutcliffe and Miss Karen, if y'all are listening, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And hopefully I'll get to see you guys again soon, since you live in the great state of Alabama as well. So the night goes on. The 03 team, they're all there. They're hanging out with each other. Some of them probably haven't seen each other in years and just catching up. And so I knew a couple of them just through various ways. And so saw a couple of those guys, Andrew Wicker, who was an offensive lineman, Tony Bonds, who lives in Russellville now, Eric Oliver, who lives in Jasper, and whose wife, Tiffany, is just the coolest and the best. So got to hang out with them, talk to them, catch up a little bit. And then after the dinner was over, I stood around and talked to the OMAF staff for a little while. And something really cool happened, something that I never in a million years could have ever imagined. And as we were standing there getting ready to walk out, a bunch of defensive players walked out, including Patrick Willis. And so as we were walking out of the gate, Eric Oliver and Tiffany were in the group too, and Patrick came over and said something like, "Hey, I saw I know we got a picture together earlier, but, I didn't get to meet you." And I was like, "Well, I'm Mallory, I really wanted to tell you, thank you for everything that you always signed for me. It helped me at this point in my life," and those kinds of things. And he just ended up standing there talking to me about life and taking care of your body, and, even talking about how the things that I talk about on the podcast. And yes, I totally gave a shameless plug for the podcast, but I told him, I was like, "Look, I'm still new at it, so don't judge me for it. If you ever do listen to it." But, just telling him that, the things that I want to get out there are the facts of, people playing football are still people, and it's not just a robot. And how insane I think it is that, death threats are being sent via social media and those kinds of things, and how, it's just these players are disregarded as humans. And so having that conversation with someone who hung it up in the NFL and had one of the best careers while he was playing, but he hung it up before his body really started breaking down and before he had too much wear and tear on it. And I truly respect that. I am in awe of the fact that I'm sure he still loves the game. I'm sure, he truly appreciates all of the doors that the game opened for him or helped open for him. But, at the end of the day, he's still a person who wants to live a very long and fulfilling life. And sometimes walking away from football, whether it's good for you mentally or physically, you have to do it. And so I just thought that was really cool to stand there and talk to him about that. So, I went from earlier in the evening, like being so excited and physically shaking to go take a picture with him, to being calm enough to stand there and just talk to him and realize he's just a human being. And I think that's, one of the things too that I kind of talked about with Coach Cutcliffe was getting to tell my story to these guys. It makes me realize even more how human they are, and how, they always, both of them and all the others always ask, "How are you doing health-wise? Are you good? Do you still have any issues?" I mean, they are truly, genuinely interested in that. And I just think that is such a cool thing. And I think it's such a reminder of that is a human, and they do have huge impacts on others' lives. And they understand that, football games and football players have special meaning for fans. And I think it's just a really cool way for me to bring it back and to share a moment with them of, I understand you're a person and you were very busy and you didn't have to do that, but you did. And now I want to say thank you. And just being able to pull that humanity back into these interactions, y'all, it's just quite possibly the coolest thing ever. I just, yeah, I don't know that I have any more words than that. You know, no ego, no pretentiousness at all in either of those men, and just so awesome too, as a bystander, to sit back and watch them all of the players, talk with Coach Cut and talk with each other and catch up and listen to them talking about, things that happened back when they were playing and on the team together, and talking about their current lives and kids and wives and family and those kinds of things. That just, again, drives home the point of those people wearing those helmets and pads every single week that we yell at and we yell for and we cheer on. They have friends, they have family, they have people who love them. They have lives outside of football, and, give them a little grace. It was just one of those moments. You have those moments in life where you're just like, man, this is the pinnacle of what I've been trying to say. And, one of the things Patrick told me too was, we need more people to talk about that, and we need more people to try and bring the humanity back into it. And I promised him that I would continue harping on it on this podcast and that I'm not going to quit. And so thank you, Patrick, if you are listening. Thank you for just solidifying a little bit more the pull that I have and the drive that I have to do this and to bring that voice to something that is so needed. And even with Coach Yo's talk at the FCA luncheon, I mean, she was talking about it too. She was talking about how they had a team retreat, and one of the things she talked about was how to not stumble after a successful season. How do you go into the next season and not stumble? Don't let your ego get in the way. It's not going to be given to you. It's got to be earned. And, don't get so caught up in those moments. And so just listening to her talk about that kind of stuff too, talking about like explaining to these girls that emotions will be there and mistakes are going to happen, but, helping them understand the difference between making a mistake and getting over it and letting the anxiousness go because you're going to show up prepared. And I think that was just such a cool message to hear, because it's, I started thinking about it, and even in my life when I get anxious about something, it's usually because I don't feel like I'm as prepared as I need to be. And so how do I fix that? Well, I can start doing things. And, those are lessons that they're going to learn at this point. And she's molding these women to learn that and to go into the next phase of their lives, whatever that may be. So Friday to me was just kind of that, all right, I know what I'm saying is on point. It is necessary. It is a topic that needs to be discussed. And I think, bringing a just quote unquote ordinary fan's perspective to it, I think that's what we need. We don't need men who continually like grow up in sports and then go talk about it for the rest of their lives. No, we need women who, and even men who just have never played like at a high level, but they just were fans and, talking about how sports have helped us and learned in our own lives. And so Friday was really, really cool. Just having that driven home that, yep, I'm on the right path, and I'm not going away, and I can't wait to see where this does go, and see as we do get into basketball season and further into football season. We're going to be talking actual X's and O's, plays, games, those kinds of things. But y'all, it all comes back to it's just a human, and giving them a little bit of grace and maybe what can they learn from. So I'm excited to see this, how it progresses over the next few weeks, months, and heck, even years. So with that though, I will get out of the sappy, and I'll start recapping Saturday. I don't want to recap a whole lot of college football. I really just want this to be a very Ole Miss LSU episode, because I just have no idea how I survived that game. I'm pretty sure I aged about 20 years. It was so incredible. But I'll start kind of with Saturday. So, we tailgate. If you've never heard anything about Ole Miss tailgating, I'd definitely recommend you go check it out. You can find all kinds of stories from Southern Living to ESPN to Sports Illustrated and random bloggers in between. Even RG3 this weekend, he was one of the commentators for the game. And, I think even just having his videos around the city of Oxford on social media, it was really cool to see that. And one of those cool moments of, yeah, I've grown up in this, and it's a totally special place. And the people, again, the people that I talked about that, I interacted with on Friday, they just drove that home. So Saturday, go set up tailgating and get out there. It was hot, but LSU Ole Miss tailgate is always one of my favorites. It's just always such a fun atmosphere. But I went to go try and find a tent. We actually tailgate in the Circle, but I wanted to go to the Grove. I haven't been in the Grove except for a couple of weekends ago. I went over there once, but I wasn't actually deep in the Grove. So started walking up the Walk of Champions, from kind of the bottom of it, walking back towards the Student Union. And as I've run into this guy who is so tall. Y'all, I've never seen someone so tall in my life, in person. It was insane. And so I asked him if I could take a picture, and he obliged. And as he was walking away, one of the guys that was showing him around said, this is this is a basketball recruit. And I was like, cool, hope y'all have a good time, And, but when I asked him if I could have a picture, and he said, yeah, he was like, you're short. And I was like, yeah. I was just in awe. I couldn't even tell him that he was tall. Come to find out, he's 7'1". So I will also post the picture of 5'3" me and this 7'1" basketball player. It was pretty cool. But one of the things that did kind of bother me, and the only kind of dark spot of the day, was the fights. Walking after that, walking up, seeing the fights between LSU fans and Ole Miss fans. Physical fights. It's just not worth it. It was hard to see that, because we're all just there to have a good time. And so that was really hard to see, but you can't let it get in your way. So just decided to kind of go back, hang out with my family, and do all that, and had such a fun tailgate. And so then we go to the game, and from the moment I walked into that stadium, that energy was just insane. It was unlike anything I think I've ever felt. It was, I want to say it was probably even more intense than the 2014 Bama at Ole Miss game, where the goalpost came down, even with Katy Perry being at that game. This game was just, it was electric. It was very different. The student section was rocking. Shout out to the Ole Miss student section. Y'all showed up. You filled the stadium early, and you stayed until the very, very end. And let me tell you, having that stadium full until the very end, it's not the biggest stadium, but man, when it gets loud in there, y'all, it gets loud. So kudos to the Ole Miss student section for really hanging in there for that. But my favorite national anthem singer ever, General Wilson, he sang the national anthem, and y'all go check him out. I'll link to his Twitter page, and I may even throw up the video I took of him singing the national anthem, because it will just thinking about it right now, I have chills. It was so cool. And I knew then, I was like, yeah, no way in hell we're losing. I also will say this, as soon as I got to have a conversation with Patrick Willis, I was like, oh, hell y'all, we're not losing this weekend. Like, we're winning. Like, this is our time. So, the game from the beginning, from the very start, it was just insane. It was so intense. And, going forward on fourth down, Quinshon scoring the touchdown at that point, it was just electric and it didn't stop. And I was actually a little surprised at both defenses because I kind of felt like going into this game, if Ole Miss's defense came in and played the same way they did in the first half against Alabama and they could keep that consistency up throughout the entire game, I thought we would, you're always going to have problems with Daniels, right? Like, he's just so good. He's so good. And LSU's offense is very potent, but I thought like we would be able to get some good stops. And I thought for sure, like, our offense would be good and we could score. And I thought, you would see a very different offense than what we saw in Tuscaloosa last weekend. But I really thought the LSU defense would be able to do the same thing. So, I kind of felt like just kind of early on, it was very much who's going to have the ball last. And especially as the game went on, I was like, oh crap, it really is about to be whoever has the ball last. And so I obviously cheered the entire game. I especially, oh gosh, y'all, Anthony's hit on Daniels when he caused him to fumble. I don't know that I've screamed that loud in a very long time. That was the most insane hit. And also shout out to Anthony, because he is the one that took out the ref. And I know he didn't mean to, but he had two great hits. And he played a great game all night. I know he was probably frustrated as I saw him walk into the locker room at halftime. He did not look happy. He looked a little frustrated and sounded a little frustrated, but he played a phenomenal game, and I know he's just going to continue to get better. And he's one of our transfers, so I think our transfers had a great impact on the game. Trey Harris, y'all, he's the real deal, and our offense is so very different when he is in there and healthy. I think him being healthy, Quinshon being healthy, that really played a major part in the offense this week. Priest Corn being healthy as well. He made a couple of great catches. Quinshon had a couple of great runs. But, I feel like the unspoken MVP of the offense this week was Ulysses Bennett the fourth. He just, when Quinshon needed a break, he immediately stepped up every time. And he just kept running and kept digging and kept going. And I just was so happy for him to see him do so well. And that was a lot of fun. But that last drive that LSU had, I was so afraid that they were going to drive down the field. I thought we gave them too much time after we scored. And then, of course, the refs weren't as nice to us as I wish they had been. There were a couple of calls that I thought were questionable. I thought the holding call on Priest Corn was not holding. Again, though, I also understand I'm only seeing it from one angle, but I didn't see it the way they did. I think there were a couple of other things that, we just didn't see. I will also say the touchdown that they reviewed that LSU had, I still will say that was not a touchdown. I believe when his 1 foot that was fully inbounds was inbounds, I don't think he actually had full control of the ball. I believe it was still moving. And then by the time he had control, his other foot was already out of bounds. So, but they reviewed it and they claimed that there was not enough video evidence to overcall the turn of touchdown. So it was what it was. But I kind of thought, after that type of stuff had happened to us and, the defense just, they were tired. I just was like, crap, we gave them too much time. And when that ball went up in the air I could not look. I literally could not look, and I was just rocking back and forth. And by this point, I had started crying because I just was like, oh my God, we need this. This town needs this. This fan base needs this. Lane Kiffin needs this. But more than any of those players needed that. And when I finally did look up, it was about the moment that the ball fell. And y'all, I totally had a south end zone shower. It's kind of like a Swayze shower. Mine was thankfully water and like actual, like legit regular water. I think there may have been some brown water that got thrown up in the air as well. But as soon as they started rushing the field, I've never actually rushed the field, but I did this time. And it was so cool to be down there and to see on those players' faces how happy and just almost like not a look of relief, but just like a look of confidence of we never gave up. We knew we could do it. We're going to keep going. And that was just such a great thing to see, especially after the Bama game where, you did see that frustration look. And I think the more frustrated you get, the more doubt can creep in. And you gotta have a little bit of amnesia when it comes to these things. And so that was so cool to see them just finally get over that big win, big game. It was a true upset, kind of hump that, everybody's always said Lane Kiffin hasn't been able to win the big game since he's been at Ole Miss. And I mean, they're not wrong. But they are now because that was a big win and that was a good statement and program building win. And so, the crowd was insane. And I think my understanding is they were having to still kick people. They were like having to kick people out of the stands like after midnight. The Grove and the Circle was electric afterwards. And everybody was just so, so happy. And, the Oxford Police Department on Twitter, they're hilarious. Y'all should go follow them. All they posted after the game was #pray for the square. And yes, but I went to the square today. It is still intact. Even at 1:30-ish, people were just kind of getting up and moving around. So I think a few more brown waters were consumed after the game last night. But I walked around the square this afternoon, and as I did and just kind of watched everybody, I did a little people watching and kind of got a little introspective and kind of just looked back on the whole weekend. One of my sayings about Oxford and Ole Miss has always been this place and these people. And if there was ever a snapshot of what that means, it was this weekend. And it was almost that cool culmination of the past 23 years. I mean, yeah, it's the culmination of my whole life too, right? And I have no doubt that there will be some lows before it's all over and done with, before my life is over and done with. And there will be a lot more highs as well. But up to this point, I gotta say, it's just really cool to be able to see, this place and these people. And it's consistent. And there are so many good people there and that have passed through there. And I just kind of wanted to come on today and share a little bit and kind of give a little mini episode before we go into the week and make it, maybe not so Sunday scary anymore, but just, you have your own story, you have your own purpose, you have your own things. And at the end of the day, as long as we remember we're all humans and we're all going to make mistakes and we're all going to mess up, but that's okay. We need to give ourselves a little bit of grace, and we also need to give others a little bit of grace. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. I am going to go watch Sunday Night Football now and pray I don't have to mute it because they continue to talk about she who shall not be named. I'm not a hater. I just am over it. But as always, you can go check us out on thealabamatake.com. You can find us on Instagram at the _podcast. You can find us on Twitter at the _pod. Send us an email to thestaredownpod@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook at the Stare Down, all one word. Well, obviously, stare down is one word. The is a separate word. But yeah, if you've got any feedback, if you want to hear some things that you want to hear us talk about as we kind of go into a little deeper conference play, as we start recapping some NFL stuff and some college football stuff, I'd love to hear it. So with that, it's time to sit back, relax, grab a drink or two, listen to the Stare Down, and have a wonderful week. I'll catch you all on Friday. Bye, y'all.